This week, I want to talk to those who are newly carrying concealed and thinking about self-defense at home and on their person. What ammo are you carrying?
Blackmanwithagun.com, Ken Blanchard's Pro Gun Podcast.
Hi, this is your friend and your brother from another mother, the Reverend Ken Blanchard, and we've been talking a lot of new stuff for the person who is probably new to this movement, just to introduce you to some different way of thinking without being overly judgmental or paternal, just giving you some stuff to think about. This week we're talking about ammunition. 22, 380, 25, 9, 38, 357, 9, 40s, 45, 50 cal even. Just some stuff. What are you carrying? And then how about later at home? Some thinking, some thoughts about how you handle yourself in your home. Not too deep, just some stuff to get the ball rolling so that you do some research, so that you'll start looking for training, looking for those folks who can teach you how to do a better job than you currently have. Because we all need a little bit more than we think we do. Knowledge alone is not power. You need application and practice. This week I want to talk a little bit about ammunition, because ammunition determines what firearm you carry. If you're carrying for self-defense, if you're carrying for concealed carry, if you're carrying for protection, you're picking a firearm and the ammo to stop the bad actions of a person. And this week we're going to talk about handgun ammunition in particular, not a rifle or a shotgun, but handgun, self-defense, ammunition. Now, back before the internet, like around 1986, when I came on the scene in the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, 38s were the big thing. 45s were for military use. Some law enforcement officers that were in high-tech, high SWAT stuff were using it. And the language was different too prior to the internet, where everybody gets their information today. But back in the day, back in the 80s, early 90s, whoever and whatever law enforcement agency was doing, we followed, because they were the authority. In selecting a cartridge for fighting, protecting yourself, you looked at the shock power or the stopping power of rounds. By shocking or stopping capability, it meant that a bullet delivered enough energy at that very moment of impact to make that person who takes the bullet immediately incapable of further assault, even to the extent of flicking his trigger finger. You want an impact that jars him, slams him backwards, disorients him. The impact should numb the body, impairing his nervous system to the extent that his brain can no longer command his trigger finger if he has a firearm or an edged weapon to hurt you. And there's only like two types of gunshot wounds, large and small. A large, heavy bullet has the most initial impact and is therefore the most desirable. Back in the day, all we had, for the most part, was the standard .45 automatic bullet, which punched like a heavyweight boxer. A light, high-speed expanding bullet will cause more damage than a slower, non-expanding .45. A 9mm, for example, a .38 Special or a .357 Magnum bullet does two things inside the body. It expands to create a larger wound channel, and it causes a shock wave that ripples throughout the tissue surrounding the wound channel. It breaks blood vessels and numbing local nerves. There is an element of shock caused mostly by the extensive internal damage and consequent heavy loss of blood. But it's generally this shock of a light, fast, expanding bullet will not take effect as quickly as the shock of a wide, heavy bullet initial impact. And also, you want to add to that everybody is not the same. And if for some reason, really strange, bad guys don't go down like they do in the movies. And good guys seem to go down quicker than bad guys. And probably has something to do with they remember the last time they were shot and they didn't die. So they have a willpower, a mindset to survive that good guys usually don't have. They also have already figured on taking one for the team, if you would. And again, their mind is already set. So unless you connect with enough shock that disorients their system, nervous system, their body, if their body has to quit on them, they will still engage in hostile activity. Now, way back in the day, we talk about shoot to kill. And we learned that was the wrong word. You get sued out to nobody's business with that. Your language does matter. So as you educate yourself on self-defense, you're shooting to stop, shooting to cease. All right, so since we started the concealed carry movement, the industry has changed as well. So there are a lot more options for concealed carry firearms. EDCs, they're called, everyday carries, didn't exist back in the 90s. And some of them use full-size ammo. But there are still some small caliber folks out there that shoot 22s, 25s, 380s. I know somebody who just bought a 380, and at the time, it was a backup gun to a 9 or a 38 special or a 45. It was the second gun that you carried. A 380 automatic cartridge, also known as a 9mm short, used to be lumped into the same category as the 32. But tests have shown that the standard 380 is equivalent in stopping power to that of a 38 special round-nose bullet fired from a short-barreled revolver. Neither bullet expands, and both penetrate to similar depths. Despite this great difference between the two, they are pretty much equal in performance. Either gun will improve dramatically when high-speed expanding bullets are used. You see, you can become quite the alchemist, and the bullets of today are a lot better than the bullets of yesteryear. So you can get a bullet that you shoot for range practice and a bullet that you use for self-defense, which should be different. And the one that you use for self-defense should be and have more stopping power. You got me? Now, I know if you're already into this thing many, many years ago, then this is old news to you. But this is for the new listeners. Okay? The 38 Special is a revolver cartridge usually, and it used to be called the Police Special because it was used by like almost all cops. Now, there's a good reason for it. It worked. It worked for the average officer to handle with accuracy and confidence. And again, once you change the load and you change the bullet itself from hollow point or Hydra-Shock or many of the other new configurations that are available, it does a really good job at stopping hostile action. 357s are the souped up version of the 38 Special. And one of the things that nobody really mentions is that barrel length changes whether a bullet, same bullet, is as effective as the next one. Most of these rounds need a significant number of inches of barrel to burn off the powder to be accurate. That's why snub-nose guns back in the day were unreliable. They were concealable, but it didn't have enough time for that powder to burn, for the rifling in the barrel to do its job to make the bullet accurate. So you had some police officers, well, most standard stuff was like 4 inches and 6-inch barrels. So now, with concealed carry, when you carry a smaller firearm, sometimes that can affect your accuracy. And like everything, your mileage may vary. You have to practice and know the difference between what you're using. 357 used to be the joint, though, for law enforcement. When used in gelatin or actually in real people, the wound channel that used to be 9 to 10 inches deep, very wide, it used to cause tremendous damage. And a lot of the old guys used to talk about it all the time. They used 125 grain Magnum loads, or they had 38 specials with plus P in their fighting guns. And then somewhere in the 90s, SIG came out with their own bullet, the 357 SIG. It was spurred by Texas troopers and rangers who loved their SIG 45 pistols but missed the lightning bolt stopping power effect of their old .357 Magnum revolvers. So SIG worked with Federal cartridge to create this .357 SIG round. It resembles a .40 Smith & Wesson, neck down to 9mm, though the actual construction is somewhat more complicated than that. Different companies load to different velocities, and depending on pistol and barrel, factory 125 grain jacketed hollow points are delivering 1,325 to over 1,400 feet per second. History has told us that gunfights indicate that this cartridge was particularly good for shooting through auto sheet metal and window glass, yet does not deliver on the street the dangerous overpenetration that some gelatin tests had indicated might happen. Then around 1986, there was a thing that happened. You may have seen the movie. I was actually around at the time and heard about the 1986 shootout in Miami. The FBI labeled that the 9mm was ineffective and blamed the deaths of their agents on using that round. So they were looking for everything hotter than 9mm. They went to a 10, they tried it. They went to a 40, they tried it. The .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge was popular for self-defense. It has effective stopping power as well as limited recoil. It has powerful muzzle energy and a higher capacity than most .45s back in the day, or 10mm. Firearms chambered in .40 Smith & Wesson are also sometimes easier to carry than the larger .45s. See, the story is there was this couple, these guys, they former Army Rangers, Michael Platt, went on to kill 2 agents and wound a third. And they blamed this 9mm because it didn't penetrate far enough into the gunman's torso. And though this guy was shot multiple times, an autopsy revealed, and that he died from wounds suffered from that first shot, one that penetrated his chest cavity but stopped just short of his heart. They were trying to find something a little bit better, a little bit different. But around 2015, they went back to the 9. And that's what happens with this whole gun thing. You get all the experts. Again, back in the day, it was law enforcement. Now, nobody likes cops. Well, not everybody, but there's quite a few people. We've lost the, we call that dude, officer friendly. He doesn't exist anymore. But there was a time when law enforcement was respected. And in the gun world, we kind of listened to them. So, introduced in 1990 by Smith & Wesson and Winchester, this 9mm Luger length 10mm cartridge was designed to split the difference between the 9mm's higher round count in the gun and the .45's auto larger caliber. And it succeeded hugely in police work, being chosen by more law enforcement agencies today, or back then, than ever before. The first generation ammo was 180 grain subsonic with a conventional jacketed hollow point bullet that did better than expected, but it still wasn't spectacular. It pretty much duplicates the ballistics of an old .38-40 black powder handgun load of the 19th century frontier. But everything is subject to whatever you feel. If you're not recoil sensitive, 40 works for you. But here's the standard. 9mm Parabellum or Luger is still popular. It's universal. It's roughly equivalent of a .38 Special with the slide rule ballistics. The 9mm is inferior in shock value or power, stopping power, in the standard loading. It's fast. It leaves a tiny wound channel. It has high speed expanding bullets, but you can up that. You can change that. You can buy good self-defense ammunition and make your 9 a person stopper, a bad guy stopper. Competition shooters, you'll even find some .38 Super out there. And on paper, the .38 Super is equivalent to the .357 Magnum, but it's not good for self-defense. Like the standard 9mm, the Super bullet just drills a small deep hole and doesn't give that much shock. Cartridges with expanding bullets, you can get them though. Just do a little research. Go further than just listening to me. I'm hoping that I piqued your interest on the .357. My tongue is gone. 357, the 9mm. I didn't even talk about 22, the 380, the 40. How about the 45? ACP, automatic Colt pistol. It's always been a standard, and some people live by it and breathe by it. Nothing is 100%, but the 45 comes closer than any other handgun that is still controllable in rapid combat fire, and the basis for it has been tested many, many times. In a gun that it will feed reliably, hollow point ammo is better choice in a 45. It magnifies the shock power even more. Now, my favorite friend and brother from the German persuasion, Gaston Glock, his company created the 45 Glock auto pistol, or GAP. It's a shortened and strengthened 45 ACP round instead of pressure. Guns for it have been produced by Glock, Para Ordnance, and Springfield Armory. Way back in the day, the state troopers of Georgia, New York, and Pennsylvania had the 45 GAP as standard. And they use a 200 grain Spirit Gold Dot and a 230 grain Winchester Ranger in their ammo. And they've been pretty happy with it. And just for grins, you ever thought about the 22 rimfire? Well, it actually has pretty good killing power, not stopping power. Because if you shoot the 22 at the right place, you can stop all nervous system movement. The greasy, outside lubricated bullet carries a lot of dirt into the body and creates a highly septic wound. The hollow point bullet that you can get for this will break apart and create a great deal of internal damage. 22 slugs ricochet inside the body. The little high-speed bullets can even zip through some bulletproof vests that would normally stop a 45. Those who have been shot by 22 describe it only as a stabbing pain with no numbing shock effect. Unless the bullet strikes the brain or spinal cord or eye, the attacker will not go down. The same is true, usually, for a 22 Magnum rimfire. It tears a bigger wound but still has no stopping power. The 22 is what they call a mouse gun. It cannot be expected to sledge down a charging 200-pound male. Nevertheless, alone among small caliber defense cartridges, it has a valid place as a self-protection weapon. One, it is easy for the gun-shy person to own. And any gun that you own is better than not having one when you need one. A person who is afraid of his gun or her gun will never be able to effectively defend themselves in a gunfight. So it's better to have one than not. And it is the cheapest thing you can shoot. And one critical thing that really matters for self-defense, home defense, is over-penetration. On the street or in your house, the only safe backstop for a defensive handgun's bullet is the body of the offender. Therefore, it is not exactly responsible to be firing bullets that are likely to shoot through the bad guy. This is one of the main reasons that law enforcement in its virtual entirety has gone to expanding bullet handgun ammunition in this country. People sometimes think that hollow points are inhumane, but it's just the opposite. You don't want your bullet to be bouncing all over your house, or you don't want it to go zinging through and past the intended target into another room or outside your house. You are responsible for every bullet that leaves your gun. Every one. You've heard the term friendly fire, right? Well, it sucks on the battlefield, and it definitely sucks at home. Now, I think I mumbled about 8 different calibers, and I didn't even talk about the 41 or the 44 or the 50 cal, which are out there. But you get where I'm going. Shot placement is everything. And remember, you want to cause trauma to the body so that the body goes into shock and stops hostile actions towards you. That's all you want. If you say, I wanted to kill the mother's son, it could cost you your freedom. Words do matter. So what do you have in your carry pistol? What do you have in your home defense nightstand or next to your bed? And God forbid, under your pillow. That's not smart. That's not safe. And before I quit on this subject, let's talk about 7 cases that highlight the reality of overpenetration. In 1999, the New York City became almost the last major police department to adopt hollow point ammunition. They did so in the face of huge long-term opposition based on political correctness, the bad perception that hollow points were wicked, dum-dum bullets. One reason they were able to pass, it was that the city fathers had been made to realize how much danger the supposedly humane Geneva Convention approved ammunition previously used, prevented, and presented to innocent bystanders and police officers when the duty weapons were fired in self-defense or defense of others by the officers. From their early 1990s adoption, the 16-shot 9mm pistols like Glock 19, 6-hour P226, double action only, and the Smith & Wesson Model 4946. Through 1999, New York Police Department issued a full metal-jacketed hardball round, comprising of a round-nose 115 grain bullet in the mid-1100 feet per second velocity range. The New York Times exposed the following facts in a startling report on the matter. They said, according to statistics released by the department, 15 innocent bystanders were struck by police officers using full metal jacket bullets during 1995 and 1996, the police said. 8 were hit directly, 5 were hit by bullets that had passed through other people, and 2 were hit by bullets that had passed through objects, stated the Times. So in other words, in rough numbers, 53% of these tragic occurrences were apparently missed shots, while 33% were shoot-throughs of violent felony suspects. Counting bullets that went through objects to hit presumably unseen innocent victims, 13%, that tells us that roughly 46% of these innocent bystanders were shot by overpenetrating bullets that pierced their backstops. And I say that in air quotes because they were supposed to be people, bad people. So if you bought a .380, expect to shoot until the person stops attacking. One shot might not do it. If you shoot a 9mm, expect to shoot more than once to stop the action of the intended target. Which also brings us to the horrendous thoughts of why cops seem to shoot people more than one time. Now, you hear this all the time when we talk about defunding the police and how about the police are so trained to do these things. Have you ever seen anybody high, so high on PCP, high on any of the street drugs, fentanyl, high on some of the stuff that's out here now, that they get hit by cars and they still run? They get shot and they can still fight. So if you're in a tumble with somebody that is high on some of the stuff that's out here today, and you have to shoot them more than once to make them stop, just know when you get to court, they're going to accuse you of being trigger happy, for being crazy, for being evil, for being a bad guy with a gun, because you shot more than once. Because doesn't everybody just stop when you tell them to? Everybody's different. Clothing matters. If you're shooting somebody in the summertime when they are wearing less clothing, you have a bigger chance for you have to shoot more than once. In the winter, in the fall, when they're wearing a jacket or a coat, the cloth that goes inside the wound helps make the trauma bigger. It's a good thing for a good person. But do you need to empty the firearm, the magazine, into the person? Make sure you know why you shot 6 times. Make sure you know why you shot 3 times. Make sure you know why you shot 8. Be able to defend your actions before a jury of your supposedly peers. After this quick break, let's talk about what happens when you find somebody in your house. Let's go through that scenario together. Since 2014, I have been a member of the Crossbreed holster family. If you carry concealed, get a holster that supports not only your firearm, but your freedom, the faith, and this brother with a try-it-free lifetime guarantee. CrossbreedHolsters.com. crossbreedholsters.com. What happens when you catch a burglar in your house? Or you're in the house. Many breaking and entering people specialize in hitting your home during a time when you're at work or at school or fetching the children home or something. You know, between 2:30 and 3 p.m. is a peak hour for burglaries for many suburban communities. The average burglar is not so dangerous as a mugger or a hold-up man, but neither is he a timid creature, as some people like to think. Many do carry guns and knives, and almost all can be considered armed in light of the fact that the pry bars, screwdrivers that comprise their tools can be just as deadly. The psychology of the burglar is too complex to cram into a small statement. They recognize the possibility of confrontation with you, and usually have already decided beforehand that they're not going to be captured. But how about the stick-up person who makes a confrontation on every job and almost always is considered thinking about killing if crossed? How about at night, when you're home alone and your family is asleep? Now you, being the head of your household, or the one designated to be the protector, is awakened out of a sound slumber. It will be at least a few minutes if you're an average person before your reflexes and your acuteness of your sensory perception reach full capacity. Your eyes are adjusting to neither darkness nor light, and it won't be for a matter of minutes. Your first reflex upon being alarmed into full wakefulness will be to turn on the lights. Even if it's a 25-watt bulb on a nightstand table, it's going to cause your irises to contract. If you flick on a bright bedroom light or a reading lamp, as you've probably found out already, the intense light will be so dazzling that it will give you a little bit of shock. Your head snaps back involuntarily, your eyelids squinch shut forcibly, and your eyes hurt from the bright flash. Between the jarring transformation dark to light and the pressure in the eye sockets from squeezing the eyeballs tightly shut, your eyes have been thrown momentarily out of focus. You may also experience floating patches of color that can obscure and distract your line of vision. Now, altogether, you're not in the best of shape to be fighting for your life or that of your family. But this is what happens. And this is just not all of it. This is just some of it. What if you are caught undressed? And even if it doesn't occur to you to dress before investigating the disturbance, you probably won't have time if your house has been invaded by criminals. Now, not saying you can't be tough naked, but it definitely changes how you act. A nude or pajamaed man is a vulnerable man, if only because he feels a sense of unpreparedness and awkwardness that can be fatal in a moment when you need all your confidence and all your decisiveness that you can have. If possible, put on at least your pants before making a confrontation. Shoes are optional. But your opponent, remember, is fully clothed and prepared, armed, and wider than awake. Tension has dumped a load of adrenaline into his bloodstream that enhances his already sharp watchfulness to a superhuman degree. He is performing an act he has probably planned beforehand, unless he's a drug addict trying to grab and dash. He has long decided how he's going to respond to you if you showed up. And he is half ready for you even if you don't hear him coming. His eyes have already adjusted to the darkness. He is better prepared than you are right now. The best course of action is to not go and investigate. But I know you're going to go anyway. It's probably unfeasible to call the police or to barricade yourself behind the bed for a duration of the night every time you hear a squeak in the kitchen. But if there is no real reason to believe that someone has broken in, you would be foolish to walk out and confront them with all that stuff I just said. Let us presume that you have no doubt that intruders are present and consider the variables that will determine your response. Now, despite all the stuff that I just said, your biggest advantage is that you know your house better than they do. So you can anticipate where they're going or where they are by the sound that you hear. Tactically, you can use lights to your advantage, but you don't want to highlight yourself. so that you are a silhouette looking exactly like the B-27 target that you practice with, a black silhouette on a white background. You want to make it that way for them. If you are home alone, great. If you have other people in your house, you're going to have to control the sleeping area. You're going to make sure that nobody that doesn't belong there is going to come between you and the bad guy, or that they are standing as the backstop between you. Just think for a minute. If everybody is upstairs and the bad guys are downstairs, and there's a reason to believe that you can keep everybody behind you, control the scene. Call the police. Every home should have an extension telephone, a cell phone nearby, something. Control the lights in the hall, especially the stairs. I know a guy who, after his house had been burglarized the first time, they told him to go get a shotgun. And he sat in his house working as a stockbroker. And after the bad guys came back the second time to get more stuff after he had just redid everything, he sat at the top of the stairs and watched them. They didn't see him. And then when he decided to come up the stairs, he was standing there fumbling with his shotgun. He had never practiced with it. He didn't know much about it. His fumbling alerted the bad guy that this guy didn't know what he was doing. So he started up the stairs to take the gun away from him. As chance favors the prepared, a shotgun slug found its way into the chamber, and he was able to pull the trigger and stopped the bad guy. At this time, I don't think it's really good to just start talking. To challenge them at this point is only to make them aware of your presence and maybe take away your advantage. If they are facing you with a weapon visible, neutralize them instantly. If you come upon him from behind, of course, you have the option of giving a challenge, so long as you understand that you jeopardize your own position by doing so. But what if you yell, "Hold it," or "Drop your gun," like it does on television? Well, at this point, you're going to have to shoot anyway. And even if you do, you have greatly increased your own chances of taking a knife or a bullet. If you hesitate when they turn, he will very likely kill you the instant he sees you, especially if he sees that you are armed and hesitated to pull your own trigger. You know, us regular people, well, I'm not regular, but the average American has never witnessed, probably never even read a complete official report of a real armed confrontation. But he or she has seen hundreds on the screen. On TV and the movies, the one that has a drop on his opponent yells, "Hold it right there." And the gunman just freezes, then slowly opens his hand to let the weapon fall. But in real life, the criminal does not freeze at the unexpected challenge. Don't give up. Don't give in. What they do is they turn. They turn fast. And instinctively, with their weapon, they pull the trigger. And if you, jarred by their unexpected reaction, hesitate, you'll come in second place. And why am I telling you this? Just so you have some stuff to think about. And for all of us who buy firearms for street defense, don't think that just owning a firearm is going to make you Superman or Superwoman. For instance, one who is normally afraid to walk through a certain area may, after they buy a gun and acquire a carry permit, go back to walking through that same area. After all, they figure, I got a gun, right? No. A person like you and me who wears a sidearm should be even more careful to avoid situations dangerous enough that it might later appear that you were looking for trouble. Got me? Firearms ownership requires more responsibility than you had before, because now you're not only looking after your life, but the life of everybody around you, the witnesses, the backstop, and even us nuts who are on podcasts and talk about gun rights activism. You are all part of our community now. What you do will be recorded on somebody's tiny screen, posted on social media, and become the fodder for legislation. That is, if you survive. The best way to win is to win without fighting. But you have to train to win. You have to know your own limitations. Then you can win. Because it doesn't matter what caliber you have, what firearm that you've bought, that you've gotten hidden on your side, that you have next to you on the nightstand. It matters what's in your head. Your mind is your primary weapon.
Hey, do you like this show? Here's a way you can help. Visit buymeacoffee.com/motorcycles. Help me make this a listener-supported podcast dedicated to good people like you. Buy Me a Coffee is a way you can encourage and help me continue to bring you Indian Motorcycle Radio. buymeacoffee.com/motorcycles. The link is in the show notes. Thanks.
All right, this is the first week of October at the time of this recording in 2020. And what a year it has been. I'm hoping I said something that made sense to you, even though I mumbled through some of it. And if there was something that caught your ear, your attention, that I said wrong, feel free to correct me. Check out blackmanwithagun.com at your next opportunity. Join our list and be a part of the family. Special shout out to all those that have supported this podcast for all this time. If there is a topic, if there is a subject, if there is something that I can talk about next week or the week after, let me know. My contact information hasn't changed in 20 years. blackmanwithagun@gmail.com. Just in case nobody else has told you this today, I love you. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until next week. Shalom, baby.
Until next time, friends.
To keep in touch with Ken and his cause, head over to blackmanwithagun.com.